Hi, my name is Trenton Hoshiko, and I'm a photographer in Northern Colorado. And today we're going to be starting out with some introductions. This is my first video on this channel, and it is kind of meant to introduce you to some of my work. These are pretty different videos than what I do over on my cinematography channel. Here, we're going to be talking about my photos that I take across a wide range of genres, a wide range of cameras, a wide range of lenses, incredibly different subjects and incredibly different goals with the photos, client work, personal work, hobbyist work, just really running the whole gambit because I love photography. And so I thought, what better way to start off this project than giving some introductions to some pictures that I think represent generally the things that I like. These aren't necessarily my favorite photos I've ever taken. I have to save something for other videos, right? But they're photos that I think capture a lot of ideas that I like and want to, infuse into my work. The idea with these collections is that each one will be, 5 to 10 photos and either have a theme of some sort in terms of, subject matter, the space, the photo trip that I took, a camera, a lens, something of that sort, or no theme at all. And the theme here really is introductions. And I'm really glad you're here watching. Let's get started. So this is one of my favorite panoramas I think I've ever made. I love panoramic photography. Um, it is just something that when I learned about it, immediately stuck out to me just so strongly. The idea of capturing something that like you're almost not supposed to with the equipment that you have. It's almost like the equipment that you're using isn't made for this in particular, or at least the equipment that is commonly used by people in photography isn't made to see this wide. You're pushing the boundaries both like technology wise and artistically and literally you're pushing the boundaries of the frames that you can have. And I like taking panorama type photos in weird places. This is not one of them. This is Garden of the Gods in Colorado Springs, a place that I really love. And I really love this photo. I love the colors. I love the framing that comes from the sweeping green trees down the right side of the photo and all the way back up to the left. I love the little like clearing that's off to the left side there, and I love the color of the rocks against both that green and the blue sky. This day was really cool. There'll be some more photos of this in this set. But my wife and I went to Garden of the Gods for a little day trip, and we didn't do any sort of like extra, wild type hiking or anything like that. We just had a fun day in the town and then went on some of these normal trails. And this is a spot that's just like the edge of one of the more normal trails. And I think something that I love about it is that it captures the feeling of being there from a relatively normal spot, but is not necessarily the normal photos that you do see of Garden of the Gods. I'll have a more normal photo of Garden of the Gods in a minute, but it just captures that spirit and the jutting out of the rocks from the earth right there, I think is that initial spirit that was captured in the naming it of Garden of the Gods as a park. And I think the level of the rocks just jutting from the earth, towering above, you as you stand below, or in this case, kind of almost stand eye to eye, is why it's called Garden of the Gods. These are huge formations and very impressive. I really like the one off to the left that is slightly separated from everybody else. That is just those three lines going vertically, and the spaces in between have eroded, leaving these like three sheets just straight up. These are sedimentary kind of rocks that have been turned also, and that's just so cool. And so to capture this in a panorama is something that I think makes this more powerful. If this was just a singular photo of the rocks, you wouldn't get necessarily that same scale. Having the mountains, having that clearing, having that foreground tree on the right that helps circle your eye all the way around all add to the scale of the rocks themselves and just inspire awe, especially that from the perspective this is in, you're kind of standing eye to eye with the Garden of the Gods. And so, like I said, that morning we drove to Garden of the Gods and stopped at a breakfast place. And this is my partner drinking some coffee, and I think I had a pancake that was, like, I don't know, 12 inches wide or something. Just was a small little breakfast place. And what caught me about this moment was that blue mug and it kind of matching her blue eyes. And the blueness of that mug was just so stunning. I loved it, and I wanted to capture that moment. And that's something that I like in photography a lot, is capturing little potentially mundane moments to remember them, embody them, hold them for just a moment longer. And this, I think, captures that spirit really well. I also like that her ring is this like blue opal, and it matches very well to that mug. Um, the space we were sitting in was a little bit shaded, and the background being so bright, it just, I think, feels very cozy and inviting, and it's just a very warm photo. Where even though her face is being blocked some, she's caught mid moment of doing something she loves, which is drinking coffee, but also just within the space itself, it is very, like I said, cozy. Kind of the opposite of that first photo, I have this like very low to the ground looking up perspective on Garden of the Gods. I am trying here to impart the idea of scale kind of in a different way. Instead of being lateral and you're meeting it eye to eye, here you're looking up and you see the full scale of it, but it's almost like flattened against the sky. And each area here is kind of a layer. We have that blue sky layer, we have the red rocks, we have the darker green trees, and then we have this foreground, you know, prairie brush grass, and then that little bit of green off to the right side, just kind of blotting a little bit. Despite this being a generally wider photo, they're kind of all on top of each other in a way that creates these interesting, almost stripe layers. In my editing process, I really tried to bring up those reds some and to bring out some golden light and golden highlights. The rock here is very like almost like calico colored. And that contrasting once again against these greens, I think is something that is really gorgeous. And the blue as well. I did some post added grain to this photo also, just to kind of add a little bit more texture to the image in terms of both the rocks and all of the trees and grasses. It just is like almost overwhelming, but not quite for the senses in terms of how those grasses at the bottom lead your eye right up to the rock formation, and the rock formation has these diagonal striations, and all of that has texture. I really like texture in my photos, either just from the subjects themselves or adding a little bit with like film grain that you can add in post, or the filters, or various techniques to just have some more texture in the photo. Is something that I generally like. And so this photo, kind of in contrast to the last two, is relatively traditional for Garden of the Gods. This is kind of the perspective that lots of people see Garden of the Gods from. And that day, at that time, there was a storm that was coming over the mountains behind where I shot those first couple photos. That's basically from the other side of the formations, looking almost this way, probably a little bit off to the right from this perspective, is where those first two were. And so this one is that more traditional shot, but you get to see the storm coming in, and it's almost split 50-50 across the background there, where there's the storm and then there's these, you know, more of a regular blue sky kind of look, and it's all being mostly backlit. The sun is almost creating an edge light for the mountains themselves. They're all being shadowed from this side. And I think that that's a little bit different than a lot of like the more like postcard type looks that you could, buy in the gift shop or something like that. Because I'm using the sun here as almost an edge light, it creates this different kind of contrast on the formations, separating them from the green hills just a little bit more, separating from the mountains behind them. This is still a more traditional view of Garden of the Gods, and once again, a panorama, because I love making panoramas. Just like I said, that scale that you can get from the wideness of your frame, the ability for you to expand the literal like horizon of what you can see in your, capturing format is just so cool. And once again, with this, we have a lot of texture. We have that deep focus all the way to the mountains. The edges are pretty clear, but then all the way to the foreground, those trees and all the little leaves you can kind of still discern. Everything with these photos having some texture to it. To me, instead of like juxtaposing like soft leaves versus hard rocks or something like that, by embracing the texture, we connect the ideas of the rocks and the trees as both parts of nature together. I'm not even saying that necessarily as a concrete thing that I was shooting for, but something that is evoked by the process that I used while shooting. And I think this one being a slightly different, a slightly not normal representation of the normal Garden of the Gods view is also something that's kind of integral in a lot of what I do in terms of my own photography. I like to find a slightly different perspective on things when I'm shooting them. And that goes for architecture photography and people photography as well as landscapes. And so that's where I'm going to pause us in terms of introductions. I will have a part 2 to my introduction video here coming soon, so keep an eye out for that. If you want to be notified when that comes out, I would love if you subscribe to the channel. If you did like the video, please give it a like. That really helps me with the YouTube algorithm and reaching other viewers who like these kinds of photography videos. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful day ahead of you.